and it's a problem for the economy overall. Okay, going. Okay. So now, what do we need to return to an era when, we look at the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, workers had more power, confidence, more unions, and to pass many of these laws that have given us these rights today? And how do we return to that? Luckily, I think we're at the beginnings of seeing that now. But I want to highlight a common link between the two: strong unions and strong laws. Well, first, sorry, I just want to first highlight this, which is there's a mutually reinforcing link, right? So that right now, for the last 20 years, I've worked a lot. I mentioned I worked a lot on living wage campaigns. We can pass laws, we can win a law at the city level and sometimes at the state level, but it doesn't mean it gets enforced, right? And we've got lots of laws on the books that are not enforced. City of Buffalo, they told me, I called them once to say, what's going on with your living wage law? You don't seem to be enforcing it. They said, oh, we don't enforce half the laws. No one's paying attention, right? So what do you need to get a law enforced? It's usually when workers are like, well, why is that? I don't want to. Yeah, yeah. And even before
general
that,
strike.
right?
General strike. As opposed to you.
Right. Yeah, yeah. What?
Accountability.
Sorry, but
There's accountability.
yes. And even before that, workers know their rights, and it's with a union that they know the right to wage. They might have, not learned about law that provides healthcare or whatever it might be. Unions help workers know their rights, and then they have the confidence. If you're a non-union workplace and you're not getting the minimum wage, what are you going to do, right? If you complain, you could just be fired. And even if it's illegal, what are you going to do? Get a lawyer and wait 5 years? So with a union, it's much more likely that the laws are enforced. And also, once we have laws, it's more likely that we'll. So it's a mutually enforced right? And these together bring the conditions of jobs up. So the common link between these two, the ability to unionize, the ability to pass strong laws, common connection here, one of them is the notion of democracy, right? And the whole idea that workers have the confidence to demand a voice in the workplace and to demand a voice, right? And to feel like it matters. Because a lot of people think like I could go cast a ballot, but nothing's changed. So democracy doesn't feel real to them, or they're actively excluded from voting, kept off the voter rolls. And the same thing in their workplaces, they feel like they can't speak out or get fired. And so I think in one way to reinvigorate the struggle for good jobs, for bad jobs to good jobs, is part of the struggle to maintain and revitalize employment. To fight against authoritarianism in the workplace and to fight against authoritarianism in our society. And in fact, we've seen unions grow in times of political upheaval. In the 1930s, when workers were really demanding that we treat them fairly and that we have a voice in society. In the 1960s, there was a strong overlap between the civil rights movement and the union movement. We saw unionization spreading, particularly in the public sector, in many cities and states around the country. Okay, so I think just to think about where we're going to go from here, I feel like giving this talk today versus even a month ago, it just feels a lot different. I think it's just in the air that things can in fact change. Workers are showing us that. We see that approval of labor unions is at its highest point since 1965. And what's interesting to note is, does anyone know when the approval was at its lowest? The 1930s, when was the approval?
Was it during the Great Recession?
Exactly, in 2009, 2010. And do you have a thought as to why that
Yeah, because I don't know.
power at all? And not only no power, but the bosses, Wall Street came out and said there was a crisis and it's workers' fault. Workers bought houses they couldn't afford. Public school teachers got pensions instead of breaking the bank. It's the workers' fault, right? And it took a while to climb out of that. And I think partly by Wall Street and saw the Chicago teachers strike, we began to change that message and to begin to turn around and say, wait a minute, that was Wall Street that did that. That wasn't workers didn't cause that. And so now we see public support for really at an all-time high because they realize this economy is not fair. It's not working. So we know that unions tend to grow in periods of upsurge. And in fact, it seems right now there's a book, my old colleague from Mass University in Boston wrote a book, Upsurge. It feels we have a lot of feelings in the air that this is a moment. Saw last year was a big increase in the number of strikes, and particularly in the private sector, where we're while we still are not at clearly we're not at the place like the 1930s or 1960s, but it's actually changing so fast. Just keeping track of the number of workers engaging is kind of catching up on wildfire. I was mentioning Peter earlier. I was in North Carolina last week, where I was hearing from fast food organizers that they have not been able to keep up. They're just driving around and they've seen people just walk out, like basically striking, like walking out of workplaces and without even being there yet. People are just so fed up. So we may, in fact, be at a place at something like another. So I guess the point is, if we're going to convert bad jobs to good jobs, is to first to remember that all of the theories that were told from the economists and policymakers who say it's about technology or it's about skill level or about trade, that's not really it. It is about power. It's a power struggle between the employers who've been making money by jobs bad and the workers who need to rest that to come together. Just as employers organize themselves, workers have to organize ourselves in order to make these jobs better. And I guess I want to just end by saying I think this really is this monumental moment that we're going to look back on in 30 years and be like, those were the years when things dramatically changed. And we don't know yet. The story is not written. We don't know which side is going to battle. It may be that we look back and say that the path we went down was the path of authority, where the bosses took over and fully crushed us in the workplace, and where we ended democracy, where we stopped really electing candidates and just had rulers from above around the world. We have people using force, calling the police on us, using National Guard to crush our movements. That's a potential path on right now, and there's a real chance that can happen. They are doing this to protect their wealth. That's how they do it, right? And to protect the status quo. That's how they maintain the system they have is moving towards authoritarian, right? They can't keep it in control. The other path is a path that says we're going to have to exist by building a multi-racial economy that means something, that is real in the ballot box and it's real in work. And it's something that's going to include all of us. And he built on this, the first path is one that's about protecting their wealth. This second path, I would say, has to be centered around human needs, right? So our jobs, when we think about converting a bad job to a good job, I think this is a moment for us not to just think about wages and pensions. Those are absolutely important. But I think we also should be demanding something that is about taking care of one another, taking care of ourselves, taking care of the planet, work that is rewarding for us, that feels like we're nurturing ourselves. Right? In the past, we did great to demand, good jobs that give us stability. I think it's a moment to really say it should be about human needs and taking care of one another. And I think also we don't really have a choice, right? So it's like this is a moment we're facing a crisis on all levels, and we do need to like turn inward in the sense of taking care of one another, taking care of the planet in order to survive. So I'm going to end it there and pass it over, I think, to our next person. So thank you so much.
So we are going to start with the panel. Jim Snow will be moderating the panel. Jim is a person with a long history, a lifelong history of work in the labor movement, different venues, coalition work, Music United, but work on the ground, the building trades, work in communications, and 6 years of work with the Labor Education Center. Because there's many more things I could say about Jim, but I'll leave it there for the moment. If we could bring up the 3 panelists, then Jim will introduce them and we will start that discussion.
Thank you, Kim, and pleasure to be here today. Allies in the struggle, and one thing that the opponents of good jobs have done is for us was Stephanie loose from that, and that's really a treasure to our movements, and like person, so glad that you're here with us. So we have a brief panel, a small panel, brief but small, of folks who are seeing firsthand what bad jobs are and doing their best to improve them. It's an uphill struggle, as we've heard, because of the power of the companies, people that we have to deal with. So it kind of breaks down into 2 areas. One is the battleground that exists right now between the forces of progress and the companies that are reaping literally billions of dollars off poor working people who subscribe to their websites and try to support themselves, their families, by driving occasionally during the course of a workday and hopefully getting some measure of payment out of the corporation. That's about where it stands with them. And the interesting thing about the situation for gig worker drivers at the moment is they're in precisely on the 50-yard line with the football analogy. On the one goal line is the companies that are forcing this issue and continuing to exploit them to potentially endanger many more industries than their own through their employment practices. And on the other end of the football field is the Attorney General and increasingly importantly, the General Counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, who are upholding our view of what jobs should be, that they should be paid well, they should be benefited, they should be allied with an employer, even if intermittently, that should be regular employees. So those forces are opposing each other, and the drivers, it seems to me, are right in the middle. And part of the reason for this event today is to try to flesh out exactly where that conflict is going from the point of view of drivers. And then after the drivers speak, we'll have representatives of the construction industry, the labor movement and the construction industry, explain what the ongoing battle is at the field to try and drag goodness out of an industry that really is not so good in many cases. So first, let's welcome from the Boston Independent Drivers Guild, Beth Enrique Griffith.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. So the Boston Independent Drivers Guild actually started at about the end of 2008, and I'm not one of the founding members. However, I had the pleasure of being mentored by one of the founding members, and he's still a board member of ours. And it was a group of drivers. The first meeting was around 100 drivers that got together because they realized they had a lot of things in common, a lot of issues. They got into the gig economy, into rideshare, because they could work when they wanted to. They could set their schedules. But they also had, some complaints, like they feared for their safety. They feared discrimination, they feared retaliation. And also another thing, they didn't like the 5 pay cuts that happened under duress, at the time. And that's how our organization was started. And we're happy to represent about 70% of rideshare drivers are Black, brown, and immigrant. And we're just fighting, we're pressuring, we put pressure, our organization put pressure on the Attorney General to hold big tech accountable because their business model is illegal right now. So we apply pressure for that. We also have legislation up at the State House. Our bill is called the Rideshare Drivers Bill of Rights, and it guarantees a wage floor, certain rights, money for a worker center, no matter what the outcome of the Attorney General's battle with big tech is, because we realize and we demand that no matter what our status is, we still need to have certain rights. We still need to have a wage floor. We need to be able to support our families, and we're more like dependent contractors instead of independent contractors. A lot of us, we receive some type of state subsidy, whether it's for healthcare, whether our children receive free and reduced price lunch, whether it's subsidized housing, whether it's, rental assistance, whether it's SNAP benefits, food stamps, legal aid. A lot of our drivers, some of them are working 80 hours a week, working multiple jobs, and they still can't afford to support themselves, support their families here. And a lot of us are responsible for supporting our families abroad too. And, we are just concerned about that. We're concerned about our safety on the job, on being harassed. A lot of us are getting killed. We're getting carjacked. We're getting, we're getting threatened, and we have no due process. Our lives and our livelihoods are on the line. And I don't know how many of you know this, but these companies are required to have $1 million policy, but that's for their passengers. Those poor drivers that were assassinated, carjacked, woman in Philadelphia, that policy, that $1 million isn't going to her family, or the gentleman that was carjacked in the DMV area recently. That money doesn't go to his family. They had to start a GoFundMe for him. That's what they do. They start GoFundMe. So these companies, big tech companies, have no culpability when it comes to us. And we need to really stick it to them from every angle, legislatively, at the ballot legally, because these companies are making a profit. You know, these CEOs are making millions. Dara and Logan need to cut their pay and raise ours, definitely. And I don't know, do you guys know too that there's a ballot initiative? There's a question on the ballot for November 8th. How many of you all know about that? How come you two didn't raise your hand? You knew about it? Oh, you do know. What about you? Did you know about the ballot question? Okay, so there's a ballot question on the ballot November 8th, and it's basically to basically take away more of our rights and to permanently turn us and basically 300,000 other app-based workers, you know, into a subclass of worker. Their spin on it is give workers rights, but it really takes our rights away. And so I just want to ask everyone, how many of y'all are at least 18 or above? So everyone here is legal. Okay, that's good. So how many of y'all are registered to vote? And how many of y'all actually vote? Okay, so gonna need everyone to kind of do us a favor, because you know we are having, if you could go to prop22mass.com, so sign up, get involved. Oh, Massachusetts. Oh yeah, they changed it. Thank you. See, that's why I have this guy over here. This is Raheem. You know, see, they keep changing the name. I'm confused. I apologize for that. But you can go to that website. What was it again?
Massachusetts is not for sale.
MassachusettsNotForSale.com. Sign up, get involved. We will be having Save the Vote. Hopefully, can we zoom in on voting? Did
I don't know if
did Charlie Baker sign that into law yet? But you know, I want everyone to, you know, sign up, register to vote, and you know, hopefully you can mail in your ballot. If not, just go to the polls this November. Hopefully, ballot question will get thrown out soon. That's what we're hoping for. But if not, we just need everyone to get involved and fight this ballot question.
Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Raheem Abbasi, pronouns are him. Originally born and raised from Boston, so thanks for hosting this down here. Last time I was here a month ago, we got such a warm reception. I was like shocked. Like this, you know, I never come down here, so we really appreciate the invitation as well. I work for Massachusetts Not for Sale. I'm an organizer, organizing drivers, gig workers. I myself am a gig worker. Just a month ago, I was still delivering y'all's food and packages to Uber Eats. I was a taxi driver. I drove Uber, I drove Lyft. I've done everything. I've organized cab drivers in the beginning against city and state policy, organized cabbies against the Uber and Lyft law, that they use the same tactics that they did in 2016-ish to pass a similar law because they were operating illegally. They got sued, and then they're trying to preempt that lawsuit with a law. So it's the same strategy they're doing now. The Attorney General's suing Uber and Lyft and all these other companies because they're misclassifying us as contractors, employees, because we don't fit in the the ABC test. Doesn't work for us. Personally, I don't think the binary of employees contractors works anymore for the gig economy. We're somewhere in the middle. But we all know the term flexibility. It's really about flexibility to work more hours or work less hours. It's not about actual flexibility. And this job, I always tell people, when people discover this job, they realize that their income is function of how many hours they work. So you're no longer restricted to the 40 that your employer would pay you on your paycheck. You can work 60, you can work 80 hours, or 30 or 20 if you have another job on top. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'll pass it on to you.
Great. Also joining us is Ernie Bello, the organizer for the North Hampton Council of Carpenters. Makes me think, you know, we're doing big business here. He's explained to me his territory extends from basically from Boston to New York. Bernie, is dealing with a lot of conflicts.
So my main focus is on South Shore and Southeast. I'm starting with my say, so I am an organizer with the department, and part of my daily activities, duties are to speak to decision makers, policy makers, politicians, developers, contractors, right on down to the individual. The majority of my time spent talking to work because that's where we find out where the issue and what's going on in the industry. That's where you get the pulse. It's from talking to the work. I think that's the most crucial part to this whole thing, organizing, is that you get the worker's perspective. I don't necessarily care with corporate America. I'm concerned with the work. I represent workers, and they pay me to fight for them. So most of my focus is not in the union work. I speak to non-union developers, developers that do not have an agreement with our council, contractors, subcontractors, workers who are not under the party. And in my ventures, so explaining that, I'd like to go into, I like to tell the story. When I first got on in August of 2000, when I first got on, and based on, I was hired based on past experience with union. I was raised in a union household. My father, he founded the Great Lakes Allied Shore Fishermen's School. So I was exposed to it from a very young age. I understood the power of unity, and we stand together, stand with for a change. Okay, we try to beg for a quarter. But so I got on, and this was like, you know, it was keys to the car. Go to ride with this guy today, and you're gonna go ahead. One of the first jobs I encountered, and where there is a lot of how do I put this, like a lot of torment and destruction happening happens in the residential wood frame multi-unit house, because the skill level that is required to build these projects is obviously less, and it is easier to find workers with those skills, and then they build their skills from there, because they really don't go through an apprenticeship. As we know in the union, most tradesmen go through an apprenticeship. Go on to the job. First three gentlemen I walk up to are three gentlemen from Ecuador, and they don't speak a lick of it. And I hand them my business card, ask them how they're doing, and they have a blank stare. So then start talking to them. I ask, did you speak Spanish? Do you speak Portuguese? I'm trilingual, and I speak a little bit of it. So actually, I speak Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian. Portuguese and Spanish and Italian is my background. Spanish was through working with other construction workers on site, growing up in a predominantly Latino community, and just I kind of, just gravitated towards Latino. So informally learn the language. Get on the site, get a conversation. They're nervous. They don't really want to talk to me. Hand them my card. I said, if you guys have a problem, not being treated properly, if they're working you overtime, they don't pay you overtime, another blanket, and you right away they want to be. You're not being paid overtime. I said, well, what time do you guys start work? We leave the house, we get in the van, drive us here, we're here for 6:30, wrap up the tool, we start getting paid. So they're basically taking tools, preparing the job, and they're not being paid. And then They said we work until the sun strikes. Now, I remind you, it started in August. The sun is up till 7:30, 8 o'clock. I says, well, here's my card. The boss is over there. I'll call you later. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days go by. Phone doesn't ring. I go back up. Talk to them again. Now they start opening up a little more. I brought them some water. There's no water. It's a very hot day, August. Asked them, how's things going? Oh, we're not getting that overtime. They said, well, we haven't been paid in 6 weeks. What? Yeah, we haven't been paid in 6 weeks. Well, who are you working for? Well, we're working for Alex. And Alex has his own little company. But Alex works for Santos Construction, who's from New York. So Santos got the job, and then there's 4 other companies like Alex that's working here. He goes, we're the wall crew, we got a joist crew, and then we got a plywood crew, and they break it up like that. And nobody's allowed to talk about how much money. You know, they divide them up. So if you're from Ecuador, they put you together. If you're from Guatemala, they put you together. If you're from Brazil, they put you with the person. So that they segregate and they cause rivalry. So we talk about discrimination. They're forcing the individual nationalities to discriminate each other by segregating. They weren't eating together. I went by there another time. They weren't eating together. Brazilians would eat in one corner. The Guatemaltecos would eat in another. El Salvadorians would eat in another. And it was to keep, and the employer was happy doing that because so then I started to question them more. The more I started questioning, I found out they were living in a house in Wayland. 22 years ago, a house in Wayland. I don't even know what their cost today, but 22 years ago, a house in Wayland, 1.5 bedroom, a 1.5 bath, 3 bedroom, was $600,000. I could only imagine that if there's somewhere upward of $1 million to $2 million today. They told me they're living in this house, that the Brazilians got the upstairs bedrooms, the Guatemaltecos got the living room, and that they were in the basement, and a couple of them were sleeping in the front. They were told by their employer, if you leave this house, these are all rich people around, they're going to call immigration. Do not go outside, do not go outside to smoke, do not go buy snacks or groceries. So anything they needed for snacks, they would stop in the van that they were brought to work. On their way home, and they would buy their snacks, their beers, their sodas. They were paying rent to their employer. They were paying for the food. They had a lady that was her job, was to make food. They did not have a choice in what they were doing. Because in Central America and South America, cuisine is a little different. People like to eat different things. Brazilians like to eat different things. The Ecuadorians have a different diet, and the Guatemaltecos have a different diet. They were basically, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but it was modern day slavery. Their conditions, yes, they were being paid a wage. So, but it was what I would describe as closest thing to what we would consider slavery. They, by the time they were done paying, now mind you, they were making at the time $12.50, which in 22 years ago, I came out of the field to become an organizer. I was doing the same work they were doing. I was making $19.78, plus I had $14 package, meaning in benefits, health, retirement, and annuity, dental and all. Which comes to what, excuse me, I forget your name. You were talking about what else matters on a job other than a wage and benefits. Dignity. And when people rob you of your dignity, I think that's the biggest theft. They can steal your wages, but when they steal your dignity, and your self-worth and your respect, I think that's the most devastating thing that you can do. And because of their legal status, some of them, or because of other things that have occurred in their lives, some of them did have legal status, but were forced to get on the road and come to work and be displaced from the thing. So that went on. I'm not going to end it on a sad note. I was able to extract them from that home. We videotaped the whole thing. At the time, these were big cameras with VHS, and we videotaped the whole thing, and them sleeping on the ground, on the cold ground, in the garage, on the sleeping bag. You know, and we videotaped their clothes in piles and garbage bags. They didn't even have doors to put the clothes. Gathered them up, and the ones that had legal status, we were able to plug into the union because unfortunately, our contractors go through a process where they do payroll through another company that's outsourced, and they e-verify. For the workers that we weren't able to help out, right, we made phone calls to legit open shop contractors that we have decent relationships, because we don't hate every non-union company. There is actually non-union companies out there that try to do the right thing by them. I made a phone call to the Fall River Diocese, and we had input in temporary housing until I could make arrangements with a friend of mine, and he told them their situation. He rented them out 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath apartment in the south end of New Bedford with no deposit down, no nothing. They are now all the individuals that were involved in this now found a pathway to citizenship. They are here. They brought their families here, and it worked out. And today, some of them are home and have built lives. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's a hard fight. We fight every day out there. But these stories, they happen. You know, things can't get better as long as we fight. Right now, we're currently working on talk about legislation. We're currently working on 2 bills. We have the up the chain bill that is currently, I believe, just came out of committee and it's due for a vote. Hoping that bill passed, and that is when it gets in front of the governor, that he will sign it. As well in Rhode Island, we have 2 independent bills. We have one for the AFL-CIO that will work closely with the AFL, which is a wage step. And because if an employer, this is insane, right? If one of us goes to a job site that we're working on, or to our employer's place of employment, and we steal something that's worth over $1,500, police officer's going to knock on your door, and you're going to be charged with grand theft. That's what the Open Massachusetts is. An employer in East Providence just stole $93,000 from his employee. He's being charged with this. You stole $93,000 worth of income. You went into a bank. Chances are, if you hold it up, you're not even going to get that. They don't keep that much money. But you would be hauled off to jail, and you would spend the next 10 years of your life in the prison cell. These company owners are doing this on a daily basis, and they're not being held accountable. They want to mitigate. The Attorney General wants to mitigate. And if they're on 93, maybe they get, out of those 93, they get 60. And then after it's all said and done, he's writing out monthly checks until it's paid up. They should have it. We should have the same luxury as them, or they should have the same luxury as us. And that's why we're working on that. We're also working on up the chain legislation. What I mean by up the chain legislation is starts at the top, right? Developer, when he builds a project, he knows what the price of material, and he knows what the area standard is for labor. But you can't cut the price of materials because they are what they are. So how he decides he's going to fatten his pocket is on the back of labor, right? And they've been doing it for years, since they formed a roundtable. ABC formed a roundtable to discuss exactly what this young lady was saying, how they were planning on how they could fatten their pockets and how they could bust the union. 1970, 2 years before I was born, over 70% of all construction in the United States was done on a union basis. Today, the national average is a little higher than the general, somewhere around 13.7. So we've lost a lot of ground, and it's not without trying. Now, I think we've come to a point where they've woken a sleeping giant, and I think just the workers are tired of it, and we're starting to see this thing shift. And like she said, they're either going to crush us and we're going to be under Donald Trump for the next 100 years and his family, or we're going to crush them and get back what is rightfully ours. Because they are nothing without us. We manufacture, we create, we build. And without us, they ain't nothing. Thank you for
Thank you so much for the panel. I'd like to Q&A. I'd also like to bring up another barrels to help with the discussion. So the labor educator, for kids center, 5 years, that has over 30 years experience.
Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing. I saw your hand up before we were even done, so if you have a question, and then we can take stock and have a conversation for like the next 15 minutes, and then also folks are invited to the Labor Council meeting that's happening at 6:30, where Stephanie's going to be also presenting.
I also like to say that we have a lot of hot snacks in the back. We're hoping that people will be able to socialize, spend a little time together. But first, the Q&A.
Yeah, please introduce yourself, what you're studying, and
my name is Isaiah. I am second year, and over the summer I actually worked. Actually, no, my father. So I've been around, I've been around construction for 25 years. One thing that I've noticed is that it is very segregated. Like where you're from matters a lot. Like they just, I don't know, it's just like it's the littlest thing. They'll just be like, oh, he's Dominican, so it's little things like that. It's like literally, it's like their whole thing. And it's like if you're not part of that niche, like if you're not in their group, it's very stupid too. It's like we're all working the same place, we're all the same. You're not even making more money than me. What do we, you know? And I just know when you were talking about like it creates a rivalry. Yeah, no, I definitely live. Like I've definitely seen. Yeah, and the construction business. It's very bad. Like I work there. I've like seen how it's just like for how hard that they have to work. Just in general, like nobody on this campus is doing anything nearly as difficult as working at construction. There's nothing going on here is anywhere near that difficult. And yet they don't get like, I mean, they're supposed to get paid, but then there's so many situations where they don't get paid. I mean, it's not like they're seeing that a higher status in society. I feel like that's been up there as well, because I feel like it just deserves more status for how hard the job actually is relative to everything else. But I don't know. I just felt like
I know we have a lot of labor leaders here from a lot of sectors that would say that their workers are the hardest workers, right? So, I mean, Stephanie really brought us together, looking at our common interests and how can we build power. So, please, like, I know, we have a few different sectors here, and if you'd like to share a little bit about your connection to the gig economy, to misclassified workers.
I'm Shane Allen. I'm the representative from that union. I just wanted to say thank you guys for. We're definitely voting no on the bill, right? That's the ask. Verifying. We have to vote no. But we represent the entity formerly known as Peapod, Shop by Home, the Shop Run, members that the delivery vans, trucks, or whatnot. And that bill is definitely, we see that as a threat, our membership and our folks that work that. So we're behind you guys 100%, and I want to get more of that out there. You know.
Can we plug the campaign a little bit? So the whole thing. Thank you for bringing it up too. That's like when we're breathing and drinking and breathing every day. The first thing when I talk to a driver, I say, first of all, if your employer was spending $100 million to change the law, to change your employment status, no matter what the company was, but especially a big tech company, what are your thoughts? And they laugh. I go, it's going to be awful. And I go, do you vote on is it fair that everybody gets to vote on your job? You don't vote on the mailman's job, the teacher's job, the cop's job, even a public sector job. You don't directly vote on their status, compensation method, or whatever. That's not fair, because they know, these big tech companies know that they already played the card of paying off the legislature donating to all the campaign committees. I fought against that myself. We went up $50 million against maybe $20,000. We didn't win. Spoiler alert. So that's the kind of big thing we're going up against here. And as workers, as kind of people in this limbo, we don't know what these future questions are going to be for us. Like the professor was saying, right? How do we build school? And that's the next step. So I like to say, and our boss Jonathan Paz likes to say that right now we're on the defensive. We're on the defensive right now, and then after November we'll win. We'll jump up the trenches, because that's the next big fight. We're going to have hundreds of union organizers reaching out to every community in the state for organized gig work. That's the plan. That's what I want long term, because I've been there and it sucks to not have anybody on. Right? We tried to get the Teamsters on board with the cabbies. We tried to get the steel workers on for a long time. We only get so far, and then somewhere some elected would kind of put their foot down and say, hey, enough of this. We don't want to get out. And a lot of people said it quietly, but I'm going to say it out loud. That's my piece.
Yeah, I'm interested in the notion of flexibility for the worker, and whether there's something unique about the advent of the App Store vis-a-vis industries that have had flexibility in that under the terms of regular employment for decades, maybe even centuries, and whether if we had the app applied to those jobs, whether they would be equally successful or also equally flexible for the worker. And I'm curious, do you know that over the decades, places like the longshoring industry, the maritime industry, the entertainment industry, the construction industry, the hospitality industry, all of these industries have had arrangements where the worker appears, presents himself or herself, obtains employment for that particular moment, and then goes away and decides the next time he or she wants employment to show up under the terms of that arrangement. Shape up on the waterfront, where longshoremen go on a day that they would like to work, and they get subject to a selection process. They go on to work on the dock. So is there really fundamentally anything different between those arrangements and the arrangements you have to live with Uber and Lyft, with DoorDash?
I really think, I mean, the real difference is, I would say, the pay scale. Longshoremen make a lot of money. And
Doing something good about this comparison. Go ahead.
yes, and I would say also, if they're not compensated fairly, they have the power to basically shut down the world, because as we can see, you know what happens when courts get backed up. Like, I really see this fight against big tech. It's not about flexibility. It's about control. It's about exploitation. But that's the only thing that they have. And this ballot question, it has nothing to do with flexibility.
Right.
And
That's exactly.
yeah, it does. I mean, it doesn't. And unfortunately, it's been marketed that way. It's being marketed to us workers. And even a lot of the workers are misinformed, and they're participating in their exploit, in their subjugation and exploitation. That's what's like totally, totally different, I would say. And also, it's just though what you mentioned, the pay scale, the pay scale is higher. You have to have workman's comp for that. With this gig work, there's no workman's comp. If you don't have it, if you're not paying for it out of your own pocket, good luck. I mean, there's benefits, and there's no benefits here. And as we've seen in California, less than 10% of people would even be eligible for benefits. They're not sending the information out to people who are eligible for it. And it's not really a benefit at all. You have to work a certain amount of hours, and 83% of us won't even qualify for it based on how many workers they say are paid full time, how many workers are paid part time. And honestly, in order for us to survive, in order for unions to survive, I'm going to the political strategy. We really need to, I've been studying this a lot recently, and I have to give credit where credit's due. The Republicans had a plan, and it's been implemented. They have the courts, they have the legislators, they're gerrymandering. We have to go after corporate politicians, and we have to get rid of politicians that are beholden to their donors instead of beholden to the workers, and what's best for the taxpayers, and what's best for the residents of this state. I didn't come here to make friends. I didn't come here to kiss politicians' butts. I've gotten in hot water about it. I don't care, because kiss your donor, go kiss your donors, but we're gonna identify someone in the community that's not gonna sell out to the billionaire class and really cares about their workers. That's really what it's going to take. It's going to take a grassroots movement. It's going to take people getting involved politically. It's going to take our young people like yourselves to actually vote, get involved, demand change, educate each other. Because if we don't go to the polls and get these corporate Dems out of office, because they're no friend of ours, they're no friend to labor. Let's start more unions. Let's unionize more Starbucks. Let's unionize retail. Let's unionize all these different workforces. It can be done, because things are going to get worse and worse and worse, but we can prevent that. but we have to basically, we have to do a grassroots movement the way the Republicans have been doing. And they're winning. We're more progressive in this country, yet we've regressed because of their strategies, and we just have to duplicate. There's more of us than them.
It's 5:30. I don't think we could end it any better than that. So thank you so much for.
Yeah, I was like, and I'm like, why not just give the work? I mean,
Yeah.
Thanks for what you